Yes, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Manchester United have eventually beaten Omonia 1-0 at Old Trafford in the Europa League. And I've seen a couple of the comments just as I was waiting to go live, waiting for it all to tick over. Some people saying we didn't get lucky, we got what we deserved, but that's a valid opinion, I guess. And I think, was it over 3 expected goals we were expected to score? But sometimes you don't get what you deserve. And if United had got what they deserve, it wouldn't have took us till the 3rd minute of injury time to get the goal that we absolutely deserved. We had 33 shots. 8 of those were blocked. I think 11 on target, 14 off target. You've got to give it the United players for the persistence, the confidence to keep going and grind out a win like that, because sometimes one of those days is a real thing in sport and in football. You don't always get what you deserve, and the Scousers are going bananas. It was over 4 XG, so I only saw it at 3. Maybe McTominay's actually took it over that yet. I tweeted just 10 minutes to go at some point that we'd had more shots on target than Liverpool had last night in scoring 7 goals. When you watch some of the goals that Liverpool scored, you go, yeah, of course, the keeper looks like he's in on it. Unlike the keeper that we had tonight. And sometimes that's just football. When United lost 6-1 to City, City had 6 shots on target, 7 shots on target. United had 6 back in 2011. Sometimes that's just football, and the scoreline doesn't always dictate what the game actually went like. So, very happy that United are still in the hunt for finishing top of this group. Won't be easy. Of course, you've got to go to Sociedad and get a result there, but that's something that I think that we can do. And it's something that we're now in a position to do after getting that over. I was frustrated watching the game, as I'm sure any United fan would have been, because we were playing well, and something that I've noticed in the last City aside, in the last few games with United, is there seems to be a real composure starting to form and a real belief starting to form in how we are looking to play football. I personally think we need to be a tiny bit wider. We're receiving just sort of in between the half space and the wing sort of channels. And I think if we just received it just that little bit wider, just held our line a little bit wider. Have you noticed how effectively we're switching the ball? I think that's something that I can really see from this team, is that we're really penetrating down one side, coming up against the roadblock, still not seeing Anthony beat his man anywhere near enough. But once we're seeing us penetrate down one side, we are switching plane and we're attacking down the other side. It's a really effective thing to do when you come up against low blocks, which is something that United have really struggled with. And that's just the way it is. I think that there was moments in the game that we should have killed it off. There was opportunities to score. Rashford had countless shots. Ronaldo had some good opportunities. Bruno had some opportunities, and we just didn't manage to just do it. Sometimes that's the nature of the game, isn't it? And I think it highlights that need for a goal scorer that can come on. The fact that we had to bring Scott McTominay on in an attempt to get a goal just shows the nightmare with it. And I think that's just something that we're going to have to try and resolve come January, I think. Get your questions in, and I'll come to see what some of you guys are saying. John Donahue says, sloppy in front of goal. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. Brian Casey says, Hargreaves mentioned the fullbacks were coming inside when attacking, making us too narrow. Maybe. Not always 100% that, though. So, with our lot, I play the fullbacks in the half space, and the reason for that is to aid the wingers going wider to get round the outside. I think you can play the fullbacks on the inside there. But you have to make sure that the wide men are in the channel outside them, and they become a bit more of a feed into those players. And then you can also underlap in there as well. So that's something that I think you can do. Someone said, how's the walks going? Well, I haven't done any since Sunday. I was nearly on my knees on Sunday with this chest infection that I've got. The phlegm's changed colour, which I believe is a good sign. It was bright green, which means that you're literally infectious. Now it's yellow. So I'm hoping maybe another. Like, I walked from the car park to the office today, and it wiped me out. So I'm not ready to be doing 10Ks weight again just yet. I'm just going to add the total on. So instead of doing 10Ks next week, maybe I'm doing 13 or 14Ks to try and catch up. RN says, do I think Marshall would have made a difference, seeing that he's quite clinical this season? You'd have to say yes. I think looking at how he's performed this season, I think, yeah, he would have made a difference. But the problem with him is that he doesn't he doesn't have the ability to stay fit. Yenka says, what sort of signing will take us another step forward? It feels like we're a better team now. I still think there's potentially another midfielder. Definitely a forward. Definitely a forward would take us further, I think. And maybe a right back, I think. Daniel says Garnacho won't play until he signs a new contract. Maybe. Shadow says, disappointed with Rashford and Marshall. They're the only people who take on disappointed that Rashford and Marshall are the only people that take their man on. Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually, yeah. There's a lot of players that seem to want to play a little bit on the safe side. Jockey says, not to dig out Fred, but there were moments when he needed to calm down and control his movements. That's what you get with Fred, though, innit? You put him in there for like that energy and chaos, really. Mitchell says, Anthony give the ball away constantly and only passes backwards. We mentioned this either in 5 Things or in the review at weekend. He's done well and he's been scoring goals, hasn't he, at the moment? But there are levels and gears that he needs to get to go through. And I think he's been pretty good. But I think that you want to really throw it up. Someone says need Trent at right back. Why do we need Trent at right back? Stupid statement. Ed C says Fred looked rusty and him and Cass didn't seem to be on the same wavelength. We're down it because you'd assume that he would have been playing with him at national level. But it's okay to be rusty because he's not played. Ejiro says Bruno should play closer to midfield instead of being close to the striker. He needs to create. I definitely agree on that. I definitely think he thinks he's the shadow striker rather than an extra midfielder. Ed says keeper was on fire, and when he wasn't, our finishing was god-awful. We did put a lot of shots at him. Technically, you want to be putting the shots in the lower corners. They're the most difficult ones for him to save, but we put so many aiming for the centre of mass. I don't know. Tino says, only just joined. Don't agree with the title. I don't think we were lucky. Got not very clinical. Ten Hag did everything to win the game, get paid off. Yeah, we covered that just at the start. It wasn't necessarily lucky that we snatched a win, but when it's the 93rd minute and you've had 33 shots, we did get lucky, ultimately. Daniel says Bruno has to play forward because our striker is ancient and can't move. Don't necessarily agree with that, to be honest. I think you can still there can still be movement. You know, you can have intelligent movement. Yvonne says, Steve, we were shite. We weren't shite, though. I mean, the finishing was shite. No one's going to argue with you there, love, but I don't think you could say we played shite. I think we played very well. I think some of the control, some of the patterns that we played were sensational. I thought they were excellent. Scotty says, most boring game of football I've seen since the Astana game a few years back. That is the problem with Europa League, isn't it? There is an awful lot of mismatches which result in a lot of games going a little bit like this. By the looks of things, some of the people that are about to drop into the Europa League are definitely going to make it a more exciting competition as we get into the second stage of it. Ket says, what do I think about moving into a 4-4-2 formation in a low block? I like the 4-4-2 formation as a low block. I think the boxy nature of it makes it a valuable thing to use in a low block. I think it's quite effective. Daniel says, in my opinion, our best periods as a team is when Marshall has been a striker. Probably some truth to that. Yeah, I'd say there's probably some truth. Notch says Fred were okay, but could see the difference when Ericsson came on. Realistically, you want that to almost be the other way around, don't you? Ericsson starts, you get 2-0 up, you bring Fred on just to cause havoc and see the game. Rajat says our fullbacks need to massively improve their crosses. That element of the game is missing. Yep, I agree on that. Ryan says the ref was a complete wedge. Yeah, I mean, how was it not a red card? How are you 2 feet off the ground, hitting someone around about the knee and not getting a red card? What's going on there? Shadow says, what do I think of Alanga as a centre forward? I don't think he's good. What was our formation in the end? Our formation in the end was get a fucking goal for Jesus Christ's sake. That's what our formation was, isn't it? It's Dutch. Show says Fred was poor today. I thought. I agree with the comment that was earlier that said he looked rusty. Witterbird says Lindelof wasn't poor, but still needed Varane. It's a very, very difficult ask when you're a defender that's doing way more just recycling of the ball and trying to find line-breaking passes than you are actually defending. Ed says it's hilarious Frankie de Jong wanted Champions League football and soon he'll be hanging out with us on Thursday. Thursdays is where the cool kids hang out. It is. Definitely is. Do you want to be playing on a Tuesday and a Wednesday? Fuck that noise. Dylan says, I'll ask you this. What's a better night out, a Tuesday or a Thursday? Correct. Dylan says, Laird is good enough to deputise Delo. I think he's good enough to challenge him, in all honesty, but Ten Hag doesn't think so. Witterbird says, do I think the short minutes that Sancho proved a point tonight? Not sure. Brian says, surely we sign a striker in January. Please God, they back Ten Hag. Well, I didn't expect us to finish up with Casemiro the way it had gone. I would say the way we spent money at the end of the window, I didn't expect. I was surprised. I thought we would have been well done with our signings. We weren't. Asking us to then repeat that in January, even to a small degree, and backing in with one first-choice player, I'd be very, very surprised if we do, in all honesty. I would think you're going to have to see 3 or 4 go before that would happen. Gabriel says Rashford looked hungry today. His attitude versus last year is night and day. Yeah, I'd say on Rashford, the finishing wasn't there. But the fact that he's in the positions to take the shots is different to what he was last year. He wouldn't have even been in the position to take the shots last year. Thought his finishing lacked a little bit, but there is a sharpness, at least a physical sharpness to his game that has just not been there for 18 months. I don't think the mental sharpness is quite there yet, and I don't think his finishing is quite there yet, but he's definitely in a better place than he was. Music Alice says might not get another sniff. Ed says hope Alvaro and Laird are in Ten Hag's plans of when returning. It could be solid backup options. Yep, that's the whole idea of having everybody in the squad. The way they do is you send them out on loan, they go do bits, and then they come back. Otherwise, what is the point of the loan, right? If you're a youngster or an agent of a youngster or you work with a young player, why are you sending me on loan? What is the objective? What are you hoping to see from me in 12 months? Am I going to be a Manchester United player in 12 months? If the answer is no, I'm going now. Why am I going on loan from Manchester United? I might as well go and find a club that I can play for today. The objective with Laird and Alvaro and anybody else that goes out on loan is, okay, so if I go out on loan and I hit a level of performance where that club's fan base fucking loves me, a la Jimmy Garner, a la Ethan Laird, a la Deshaun Bernard, who I don't know what's going on with him at the moment. All 3 of those players had their loan clubs fall in love with them when they went out on loan. All of them. And then they all came back and either left the club, gone on loan again, or haven't featured. So I know it was different management, but what was the objective of sending those players out on loan? What was the point in sending those players out on loan? You know what I mean? So if Alvaro and Laird have gone out on loan this season, if I was involved with looking after them players, I would be like, okay, talk to me. Why are they going out on loan? What do you want to see from them achieve? Do you want to see them be defensively stable? Do you want to see them creating chances? What if Laird gets 10 assists? Is that enough for him to come back and push for a first team place? Okay, can we have that in writing? Can we have that in a contract? And we'll go out and do that. Otherwise, just let them go. If you're sending them out on loan and going, yeah, you're probably never going to be a first team player, what is the fucking point in sending me out on loan? Just sell me. Absolute chaos. Melvin there with a super chat says, I for one actually enjoyed the game. Thought we were playing some sensational football, only weren't clinical. The win made this a rewatchable game for me. There were parts I liked. I agree with the comment earlier that it was boring, though. Do you know what I mean? Pedro says, Manchester having difficulty with an innocent team looks semi-amateur. Rizzo says, half the kids played in pre-season should be brought into the game. Yeah, I mean, I thought Zidane being kept around might have meant more minutes for him, but it's not. Tommy says, miss my super chat. Yeah. Bruno needs to do more work as a playmaker for me. There's too much pressure on the forwards to create for themselves. Jurgen says, is the team progressing? I think there has been great progress in the last couple of weeks, stabilised a bit at the back, and now the team can focus on making chances instead of defending life. I think it is. I think it is progressing. Rehan here says, Steve, the rebuild is going to take a hell of a time with the Glazers. We will never be able to rebuild. That might be true, but there's still got to be progress. You know, if you're getting less than the sum of your parts, that's not good. But United at the moment have started to look like a team that's playing to the sum of its parts, which I think is all you can ask for. If you get more than the sum of your parts, that's sensational. I think that's the one. Notch says, was it a clever nudge or foul from Martinez? Where's the line? If you get away with it, it's clever. If you don't, it's a foul. There's so many things that happen in boxes, especially at set pieces that are by the book fouls that they just never seem to punish. And I don't know why. And they remember a couple of years ago to start the Premier League, they just like giving penalties left, right, and centre for holding at corners, and you just, okay, this is going to change stuff. And then they did it for 2 weeks and fucked it off. I don't know what the script is with that. Would I start Donny over Bruno? No. Jack says Newcastle game will be completely different. Oh yes. So obviously we'll be looking ahead to the Newcastle game. Preview will be out on Saturday for that. Newcastle got some really interesting tactical things to look forward to. They've also got some really, really interesting players. Bruno, I think, is a phenomenal player. Bruno Guimaraes, I think he might be one of the best players in the Premier League. On form at the moment. And I think he's the one that's going to make them tick. He's the one that we've got to watch. He's the one that is going to cause us problems. But I think it's going to be a really good game, you know. Pedro says, speaking honestly, do I have hope in this team? I've already thrown in the towel in. Honestly, mate, if you have, then fuck off. How have you already thrown the towel in on a team a few weeks into the season with a brand new manager and loads of people waiting to bed themselves into the squad? How? I mean, Jesus. We're literally within touching distance of top four. What was the objective at the start of the season? Because it certainly wasn't to win the league. I think the objective would have been try and win a trophy. Can we get into the top four? Can we show some progression on the pitch in style of play, control, and ability to take the game to some of the opposition in the top six that we've got? And we can do that. We just took 6 out of 9 points from Liverpool, City, and Arsenal. You know what I mean? Rehan says, Steve, the Glazers will not buy Ten Hag the right player, so it might be like Ollie, 2-3 okay-ish years and then downfall. It might be. But like I've said so many times, I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and wrong. Ed says, I thought Bruno G was a holding player. He's actually box to box. He's actually fucking unreal, is the problem. Yvonne says, playing better overall and great to see with Ten Hag. Just can't get the ball in the back of the net, though, this season. -2 goal difference in the Prem. Need a forward in January, I think. Yeah, the stats are there, aren't they? I mean, obviously, we've been on the back of a couple of pastings. But I think, yeah, the stats are there, generally going in a positive direction. And I think it's all good. Shubham says, good to see fans singing Glazers out, even when playing decent football on the field during the game. Musicali says, games like this is what Steve said earlier about shot-stopping keepers not being so important in a strong team that dominates the ball. Yeah, you've got to be able to play with your feet. It's like if we was playing on the halfway line now and we had Chris Smalling, you would be headbutting concrete. 1v1 defensively, he's a good defender. You ask him to start playing passes, he should just go, Ryan says, what do I make of Jim Ratcliffe backing the Glazers? I mean, what do you mean by backing the Glazers? Not sure he backed the Glazers. I think there's been a lot of conjecture from people going off on mad tangents from what Jim Ratcliffe actually said. Thought it was a very political answer in everything that he said. And I could have told you everything he was about to say. He didn't really say anything. Surprise, I don't. What's the hype on the Costa goalkeeper? Diogo Costa, fucking unbelievably good. He's unbelievably good, and he's probably a better all rounder than De Gea. Yeah, I think he's probably one I would look to try and bring in for sure. Jonathan says Malacia needs to hug the touchline. Steed is my left back. Do lines. What do you mean do lines? I don't necessarily. It depends what you're looking for. And it depends what your tactics are. Like I said, for what the way we play, this has changed. This changed this season. This changed about 4 games in. Actually, I fixed some stuff because I wasn't happy with what I was seeing. I had my wingers playing inverted. So I would have a left-footed winger on the right and a right-footed winger on the left. And what I would have is those players would invert, come inside onto their stronger foot, and they would shoot. We scored a lot of goals. The wingers were our leading scorers last season. Both of them on roughly a goal a game, relatively effective. But against teams that want to sit back against you, that collapse a midfield onto the top of the defence, they're running into 2 players. They're not running into the space. They're also not as effective stretching a defence when you're trying to get behind a line that's high. So I switched it. I put my right-footed winger on the right and my left-footed winger on the left. Now, to facilitate that, I had last season overlapping fullback. Mikey was double figures for assists. This season, Mikey actually has gone from right back to left back, and he's more of a playmaker. My fullbacks now are taking a little bit of inspiration from what Cancelo does. They're getting involved in the half space. They look to try and cross from the half space, that sort of Kevin De Bruyne sort of area to cross, or they look to create underlaps from the wingers who are wide. They're like a 45-degree angle inside from where the wingers are. And I wonder if that's what Ten Hag's trying to do with, someone mentioned earlier, Hargreaves mentioned about it being the fullbacks look too narrow. Not if that's the game plan. If the game plan is you keep your wingers high and wide, is because you're looking to draw the fullback to that winger. But they have to receive the ball almost on the touchline. When they receive that ball on the touchline, they've got 3 options. They can play it back to the fullback who's 45 degrees side, back. They can try and beat that man individually 1v1, hit the byline, try and get a cross in or dribble across the back. Or if it comes from the fullback or it comes from a different position, you've got a 3rd-man run option where it can go to the winger, fullback makes the run, and you can play the fullback in round the corner. You've got a lot of options by creating that space. When teams are sitting in low blocks against you, you have to use the width to be able to get the ball back in. That's the purpose of having the wingers wide, and that's why I said right at the top of the show, I still think that United are maybe 10 metres too narrow in our forward line. It's like the wingers and the fullbacks are on the same line, and you can't have those players on the same line. They have to occupy different channels of the pitch, because that's when you start making people come out and deal with you over. Brian says, shows how little we know about tactics. You've got to remember, I'm putting hours a week into this, not just sitting here talking shit on a YouTube channel. I'm going out there and I'm testing stuff. I see some stuff that I think people do well in professional football, and I go, I wonder if I can do that with my glorified pub team. And we try stuff. I think those who watch our highlights know that we play some fucking excellent football, admittedly. Sort of football that you don't generally see at this level. But it's how I want to see us play. And I get a lot of joy from testing this stuff and seeing how it works. And I think some of the stuff Ten Hag does is fascinating. I'd like to replicate some of that stuff. Mank says Rashford should have scored 3 tonight. He easily could have. I mean, 33 shots. There was people that could. Surav says, but even our wing play is not good enough. They don't cross enough. I still think they want to get I still think there's an extra gear that they've got to get out of them. Ed says Steve's doing footy manager, and yeah, I'm loving doing it. Like, I'm loving seeing, like, there's nothing like, we've been scoring goals lately that we've literally practiced. I fucking love that shit. Like, we've come up with 5 different ways of scoring, and we drill those. And that, that's something I've learned off Rio. Someone talking about Carlos Queiroz and how Carlos Queiroz and Roy Keane fell out over them constantly drilling patterns of play. That United team was very, very good at the patterns of play that they put in place. So, it's one of those, isn't it? Seth says, found it fascinating to watch Malacia today. He was all over, narrow, wide, overlapping, edge of the box. Yeah, well, there also there has to be, within tactics, there's a parameter of a framework of an expectation of where you want the players to be. Players also have to be intelligent enough and given the permission to be able to roam if they decide that they've got an opening. Players are going to play what's in front of them. You can't legislate for what they're going to come up against. You can only give them an idea of what they're going to come up against. So you have to allow them to interpret what they see in front of them in however they see fit. And young players especially, they're going to make mistakes. But that's when you get the video footage and you go, okay, come back here, have a look at this, have a look at this, have a look at this. This was the right thing to do. This one I don't really know. This one was the wrong thing to do, and here's why it was the wrong. That's where learning happens. It's only by making those mistakes, as long as you see those mistakes and can identify those mistakes and then show them, is that when you can actually improve on things like gameplay. I agree a little bit on Malacia, but I thought he was making things happen with some of the playmaking that he was doing in there. But again, there's levels and gears for all of our team to go. Notch says, seen a massive improvement with Paddock over the time I've watched live. Yeah, I think you've come to see games at nicely spaced out intervals. So I would hope that the progressions, and I think we've got better already this year. Do I play FIFA? Not a lot. I don't really have the time. Arun says deliveries for Ronaldo were almost negligible. And again, that's another reason why you want to take people wider. You try and draw a fullback out wider, you create a weakness in the back line between the fullback and that side centre half. If you get around the outside of a fullback, the next guy that's got to engage you is, let's say you go around the right back. The next guy that's got to engage you is the right side centre half. Now, he doesn't want to engage you. The right side centre half, the ball side centre half wants to protect the front post. That's all he wants to do. Fucking hell, I've got to go and tackle this guy now. Then you've dragged him out of the way. That means the far side centre half, who's meant to be looking for runners coming in around the keeper, around the penalty spot, either him or the number 6 have now got to get over to the front post. That's where it gets difficult. That's why having players that can beat a man literally takes somebody out of the game. Just go, now you don't need to. If you can beat somebody 1v1 and go around them, it's a phenomenal skill. That's why we love dribblers. That's why dribblers win the Ballon d'Or. That's why people who can dribble capture the imagination. And that's a lot of the reason why we fucking love and fall in love with football, because going past someone is fucking sensational. Dimensional Awareness Consultants says, did we not play better as a team overall at least? We absolutely. Ah, yeah, and on that, I'm talking generally about dragging people out wide, but yeah, we did come up against a back 5 tonight. So a back 5 is already sort of premeditated losing somebody in a 1v1 battle. So if you go past the wing back, they've already got a right side centre half that's there to sacrifice himself, meaning that middle centre half's always going to cover the front post, whichever side it goes to. What you've got to hope with is, because there's generally a 2 in the centre there, sometimes it's a 3, but it's generally a 2. You've got to hope that there's space in between that back line and the midfield, and that's why you're looking at cutbacks. But it's important to have a striker at least that's going to run across the front post, because if the guy at the front post starts napping, that's the best place to score from. It also means that as a striker runs across the front post, they're going to naturally pull back the defence at the front post, meaning that if the midfield and whoever your secondary line is hasn't burst in and has sort of held off a little bit, it's going to make, you know, an 8-meter gap more like a 12-meter gap, and that's enough to get a shot off, hopefully on target, and go and score. Brian Case says, yeah, but at 10. Point. Lee says, looking at Everton, not tonight. The players are half-arsed, whether they should be or not. I don't care what anyone says. They just get these games out of the way. Maybe. Seth says they were so deep and defending for their lives. Low blocks work, man. Low blocks literally work. There's a reason people play them, and they play them at all levels, and that's that. Yep. IR says, how often are we sending emails to Paddock FC members? Well, I'm in the middle of writing one today, actually, but it took longer than I thought, so I'm hoping to get it out before weekend. There's a big update coming on everything, which explains a little bit of the radio silence with everything. Quite a few dramas off the pitch. Steve says, we should work on set pieces if we want to beat such defensive teams. It's a good shout, yeah. I think that's fine. Philip says, can you imagine having the era of Rio fucking Ferdinand at you on Friday? Lucky lad. Oh, I bend it off, don't worry. Yeah, I'd talk his ears off about all sorts of shit. But he likes talking football. Like, he genuinely does the podcast because he enjoys talking about football. I think that's what he's all about, man. Is it a goal of Paddock to play at Old Trafford one day? No, it isn't actually. It'd be nice to though, wouldn't it? We was in a tournament last summer where the prize was to actually play an 11-a-side game at Wembley, and it was a 7-a-side tournament which you had to win, and if you won a 7-a-side tournament, you would then play a team that won the other half of the 7-a-side tournament in an 11-a-side game at Wembley. But we turned up and everyone knew who it was. I mean, we were literally in our kit, whereas everyone else was in like, sponsored kit that they turned up and got given random colours and random numbers. And we was in our kit because it was BT and it was Puma, and so we were sponsored by anyway. And everybody low blocked us and took it to penalties, and we lost on penalties. It'd be frustrating. I'd love to lead the lads out at Wembley. That'd be amazing. Old Trafford. I don't know any competitions where we could play at Trafford. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Cheers for tuning in. We'll be doing 5 things in the morning. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. I think we've got XG files in the morning with Dre and Ronaldo, so tune in for that one. And I might be doing something about Barcelona on Saturday. So cheers for tuning in as always, and see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.